सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So in the last session, we started with the last topic of this Vivekachoodamani, even the last subtopic, that is Videha Mukti. What is the difference between Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti? Both are liberation. Jivan Mukti means liberation while living. Videha Mukti means liberation at the fall of body. This distinction between Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti is only from the standpoint of Ajnani. For the Jnani, the moment the person realizes he is Mukta, the concept of Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti, etc. is not there for the Jnani. Then from our standpoint, what happens? We saw that the moment of realization, Sanchita, Agami, etc. gets destroyed, Ajnana is destroyed. Prarabdha will continue because it has started giving the fruits. When that Prarabdha ends, and because of the Prarabdha, when the body falls, such a Jnani who is already liberated thus merges with Brahman. One who is already liberated becomes liberated. Okay? Means what? There is no change from his standpoint. For us, there was Upadhi which was working. Now that Upadhi also has fallen. What happens when that happens? Upadhi nashat brahmaiva san brahmapyeti. Since he is already Brahman, he becomes one with Brahman. Right? It is not that he becomes something. He is already that. Okay? But now that ultimate thing also has gone off. Okay? This much is important. Now, one more point we must understand. For us, for the Ajnanis, death is what? Death is the prarabdha of this janma ending. And thus, the physical body dies. Dies means the subtle body gets separated from the physical body. So, the physical body remains here. It is either burnt or put in river or put underground, etc. And the subtle body which separates itself according to the next prarabdha takes up next gross body. This is our concept of death and then rebirth. Our concept means for Ajnanis. Right? So gross body merges with the elements, but the subtle body takes up next gross body. Correct? For the Jnani, person who has realized, when the body falls because of prarabdha, the gross body becomes one with the gross elements. The subtle body also becomes one with the subtle elements. It does not take up new embodiment. Why? Because there is no more prarabdha, there is no sanchita. From where sanchita will give rise to any prarabdha, etc. Hence, the subtle body becomes one with the subtle elements. And the causal body is already destroyed. Causal body is ignorance. Causal body is vasanas. Causal body is karmas. All of them is already gone. So gross body becomes one with the gross world, gross elements. Subtle body becomes one with the subtle elements, and causal body is destroyed. And that is why all the three bodies are gone for the Jnani. Right? This is what in the Upanishad, in Prashna Upanishad, in Mundaka Upanishad, etc., they will say, Shodasha Kala Purusha. There are 16 kalas, 16 facets are there. Okay? For each one of us. They say for the Jnani, out of 16 facets, 15 facets will become one with their causes, their respective causes, indriyas, mana, etc. element, they will become one with their causes. Out of 16, 15. What is that one that remains? That is the last kala, which is called nama. What is nama? The name of that Brahmajnani remains. See how beautifully it is explained. So we have now the name Bhagavan Shri Adi Shankaracharya, Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda. That name is there. Their aspects, etc. have become one. Why? Because they were realized. But the name remains. 15 out of the 16 kalas become one with the cause, and 16th kala, nama, that remains. Okay, this is called as Videha Mukti. Videha Mukti. Right? Now, this Jivan Mukta becomes Videha Mukta. That is something that we must understand. If one person is not realized while living, he will not realize after death also. But even one moment before death, if he realizes, then he is Jivan Mukta for that one moment, and then Videha Mukta for rest. That is what Bhagavan Shri Krishna says at the end of 2nd chapter. Okay? Antakale, Prayana Kale, that Brahma, if that last moment also if he becomes, then also he is realized. Okay? That is what happens. Now, we have seen up to verse number 561. Right? Now, how this Jnani sees everything as one. Now there is total oneness. So far, there was what we say, oneness which was understood but not experienced. Brahman, Atman is one. Experienced, but the world was experienced for Ajnanis, etc. Now that apparent world, apparent duality, apparent plurality also vanishes. Now it is, as they say, lock, stock and barrel. The last moment, over. Everything is over. That is what is explained now, how there is absolute oneness. Okay, that is what is now. 562, let us see. Prajnana ghana ityatma lakshanam satya suchakam anudyaupadhikasyaiva kathayanti vinashanam. Prajnana ghana ityatma lakshanam satya suchakam anudyaupadhikasyaiva kathayanti vinashanam. Prajnana ghanaha iti Atmalakshanam satyasuchakam anudya. Anudya, having established. Having established what? Atmalakshanam, the nature of the self, which is satyasuchakam, which is indicating the supreme reality. Having established that the nature of the self is that supreme reality, aupadhikasya eva vinashanam kathayanti. Now, before that, prajnanagana iti also is there. Anudya satyasuchakam atmalakshanam. Having established the nature of the self as the supreme reality, prajnanagana iti. How is it that the self is prajnanagana? Ghana means mass. Prajnana means consciousness. Mass of consciousness. That's it. Having established this nature of the self, which is indicative of the supreme reality as the mass of consciousness, then what happens? Aupadhikasya eva vinashanam kathayanti. Kathayanti, they speak of. Who? Shastras. The scriptures speak of vinashanam, destruction, for aupadhikasya eva. Aupadhika means one who has upadhis is called aupadhika. Aupadhikasya eva vinashanam kathayanti. They speak of destruction for those who are identified with conditionings, with the upadhis. But since this jnani has realized his own nature as that supreme reality, as single mass of consciousness, there is no destruction possible for the jnani. Who gets destroyed? One who identifies with the body, mind, intellect gets destroyed. For the jnani, there is no jiva who is identified with BMI, with body, mind, intellect, and therefore jnani undergoes no destruction. Understand the difference. What? For the ignorant people, when the prarabdha ends, the body gets destroyed. And because I am identified with the body, I say I die. See, body is getting destroyed. Because I am identified with the body, I say I am dead. Understand the difference. Now for the jnani, what happens? Is there that identification? That identification is not there. Therefore, when the body dies, body gets destroyed, he doesn't get destroyed. He doesn't feel I am dead. Why? He is not aupadhika. He is not identified with the conditioning. So, jnani has no destruction. Actually speaking, jiva also has no destruction. Body is getting destroyed, but because jiva is identified with the body, jiva thinks that he is dead. Now that identification is not there, jiva bhava is gone, and therefore jnani doesn't experience any kind of destruction. Okay, so kathayanti, the scriptures speak of destruction only for someone who is identified with the upadhis. One who is not identified with the upadhis undergoes no destruction. That is the point. And that is where Shruti is explaining like this. Next verse, he gives reference to Shruti also. Let us see. Verse number 563. Avinashi va areyam.
Avinashi va areyam.
Atmeti shrutiratmanah.
Atmeti shrutiratmanah.
Prabravitya vinashitvam.
Prabravitya vinashitvam.
Vinashyatsu vikarishu.
Vinashyatsu vikarishu.
Avinashi va areyam. Atmeti shrutiratmanah. Prabravitya vinashitvam. Vinashyatsu vikarishu. Avinashi va are ayam atma. Iti Shrutihi Atmanaha Avinashitvam Prabraviti. See how the sentence is constructed. Are means oh dear. So this is now reference to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Chaturtha Brahmana, fourth section of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where Yajnavalkya is saying, Are oh dear, Ayam Atma Avinashi. Vai means indeed. Indeed, this self, Ayam Atma Avinashi, is indestructible. Iti, in this way, Shrutihi, the Upanishad, Atmanaha Avinashitvam Prabraviti. Shruti speaks of indestructibility of the self. Where? Vinashatsu vikarishu. Vinashatsu, amidst those which are getting destroyed. Vikarishu, amidst those objects which are modifying. Staying within or amidst these destructible modifying objects, the self remains indestructible. Okay? What objects are we talking about now? What is this destructible modifying objects? Objects are upadhis now. The body is getting destroyed, the mind is getting destroyed, the intellect is getting destroyed, but the self who appears to be amidst these destructible modifying upadhis remains indestructible. In Bhagavad Gita it says, Vinashatsu avinashyantam. Ashariram sharireshu. Anavastheshvavasthitam. Mahantam vibhumatmanam mattvadhiro na shochati. Vinashatsu avinashyantam. It appears as though the self is amidst the objects which are vinashi, which are destructible, but being there, the self remains indestructible. Right? And therefore, upadhis get destroyed, not the self. Jiva is identified with upadhis and therefore considers oneself to be getting destroyed. Jnani is identified with the self and therefore doesn't consider oneself to be getting destroyed. Upadhis are getting destroyed. Self never gets destroyed. If you identify with the upadhis, you will get destroyed. If you identify with the self, you will not get destroyed. Jnani identifies with the self and therefore there is no destruction for this jnani. Is this point clear? Now what? Now there is no distinction. What distinction? Let us see. Verse number 564. Pashana vriksha trunadhanya kadankaradyah Dagdha bhavanti hi mridaiva yatha tathaiva. Dehendriya sumana adi samasta drishyam. Jnanagni dagdhamupayati paratma bhavam. Pashana vriksha trunadhanya kadankaradyah dagdha bhavanti hi mrideva yatha tathaiva. Dehendriya sumana adi samasta drishyam. Jnanagni dagdhamupayati paratma bhavam. Pashana, stone. Vriksha, tree. Trina, grass. Dhanya, grain. Kadankara, husk or straw, husk. Adyaha, etc. dagdhaha bhavanti. Dagdhaha, when burnt, mrideva bhavanti. They become clay or they become ash. Yatha, just as stone, tree, grass, grain, husk, etc. when burnt become ash alone. Tatha eva, in the same way, deha, body, indriya, senses, asu means pranas, dehendriyasu. Don't say sumana. Sumana word is not there. Dehendriyasu, deha, indriya, asu, manah. Asu means pranas. Earlier also this word has come, asavaha, pranaha. Deha, body, indriya, senses, asu, prana, manah, mind, adi, etc. Samasta drishyam, the entire seen world, the world that is seen, drishyam, jnanagni dagdham, when burnt by the knowledge of, by the fire of knowledge, paratma bhavam upayati, attains paratma bhava, attains the nature of that supreme self without distinction. They all have distinctions when they are there. When burnt, everything is just ash. Whether earlier it was grain or a tree or pashana stone, it doesn't matter. When burnt, all of them become one. In the same way, deha, indriya, prana, mana, etc. they have distinctions before. Once they are burnt, they all become self alone. We may say that the gross body becomes one with the gross elements, subtle body becomes one with the subtle elements, but please understand, for the jnani, there is no gross element, there is no subtle elements, therefore everything is just the self, so they become self alone. Before there was a distinction, now when they are burnt in knowledge, there is no distinction. In some books, there is a Pataveda. Pashana vriksha trinadhanya katambaradhyaha. Katambaradhyaha. In some books it is there. Kata means mat that you put down. And ambara means cloth. So there it will mean stone, tree, grass, grain, mat, cloth, etc. Just list of objects. When they all are burnt, they all become ash. One ash. No distinction. No distinction. You must have seen in Holi, etc. also, no? There are different things that are put in that Holi. There are trees, then there are leaves also are put, coconut is also put. Once everything is burnt, it is just ash. You can't make the distinction later on, oh, this is the ash made from tree, from branch, from leaves. This is fruit which was offered. No, you can't make any kind of distinction. Everything just becomes one ash. In the same way, the body, senses, pranas, mind, etc. all the distinctions were there before. After they are burnt in the fire of knowledge, they just are one. What is that? They are just that supreme self. Even the seeming duality, plurality is not there. Gone. Totally gone. Another example, Shankaracharya gives, next verse, 565. Vilakshanam yatha dhvantam liyate bhanu tejasi tathaiva sakalam drishyam brahmani praviliyate. Vilakshanam yatha dhvantam liyate bhanu tejasi tathaiva sakalam drishyam brahmani praviliyate. Simple example. Yatha, just as. Vilakshanam dhvantam. Vilakshanam, distinct. Dhvantam, darkness. distinct darkness, bhanu tejasi liyate, tejasi in the light of bhanu, bhanu means sun, liyate merges. Just as the distinct darkness merges in the light of the sun. What is this darkness merging in the light, Vedji? Before the sun rises, there is total darkness. When the sun rises, there is total light of the sun. Where is the darkness gone? Darkness has become one with the light. You can say darkness is totally destroyed. Destroyed means what? It merges with the light of the sun. And therefore you now see only the light of the sun. Darkness is nowhere seen. Tatha eva, in the same way, sakalam drishyam, entire world, seen world, brahmani praviliyate, merges totally in Brahman alone. Why? All the distinctions, the entire seen world is created by ignorance. That ignorance is gone. All the world, the entire world becomes one with Brahman. Now absolutely no distinction. Earlier you can say the vision is falsified vision. See, you are seeing the world, but you understand that it is not the world, it is Brahman. But now at the fall of the body, there is no seeing also. It is total merger. It is total merger. See, sometimes this when there are two companies, sometimes one company takes over the other company. Initially you will see when that merger process is happening, what they will do is the other company will continue to work, but for this company. When the merger process is happening, so they will continue as they were doing, but now the owner is someone else. Then slowly they will start merging, and finally what will happen, that company separate will not exist. It will become totally one with this company. Initially there will be distinction. That is the period of Jivan Mukti. When the merger is complete, the second entity is not there. One entity alone remains. That is what is the Videha Mukti. There is total merger. Okay, so the entire world that was seen earlier has now become Brahman. So the world is not even seen as world. Earlier it was seen but understood as Brahman. Now it is not even seen. Total merger. Brahman alone remains. Like what? Next verse, beautiful. 566. Ghate nashte yatha vyoma व्योमैव भवति स्फुटम् तथैवोपाधिविलये ब्रह्मैव ब्रह्मवित् स्वयम् घटे नष्टे यथा व्योम व्योमैव भवति स्फुटम् तथैवोपाधिविलये ब्रह्मैव ब्रह्मवित् स्वयं यथा. Just as another example, घटे नष्टे, Sati Saptami. When the pot is broken, घट means pot, nashta means broken. When the pot is destroyed, broken, vyoma eva sputam bhavati. Pot space becomes space. Or vyoma eva bhavati. You see, ghate nashte yatha vyoma, that first vyoma is ghata vyoma, pot space. Vyoma eva bhavati sputam, clearly becomes space. When the pot existed, because of ignorance, one may say that the pot space is different from total space. On gaining knowledge, one may say that it may appear like pot space is different from total space, but it is not. Pot space is space alone, on knowledge. Now what has happened? Third step. Pot itself is gone. One first step is the step of the ignorance, where you feel there is distinction. Step number 2 is of that jnani, Jivan Mukta, where it is seen as distinction but not understood as distinction. Pot is seen, but pot space is understood as total space. Now the third step, where distinction is not even seen. Why? Because there is no pot now. Pot is gone. So even the seeming distinction is not there. Tatha eva, in the same way, upadhi vilaye, when the conditionings are gone, body is gone, gross body is gone to gross elements, subtle body is gone to subtle. When the upadhis are gone, Brahma eva Brahmavid bhavati swayam. Brahmavid, knower of Brahman, Brahma eva bhavati swayam. Himself becomes Brahman. Earlier the upadhis were there. Therefore the knowledge was, what we say, falsifying the vision of the eyes. Different example also we have seen earlier. The mirage water example. In ignorance, one may consider that the sand is water. In knowledge, it looks like water still, but he understands that it is not water, it is sand. But still it is looking like water. Now third stage is what? It is not even looking like water, it is not even there. In the same way, in the ignorant state, the world was there and I thought that the world is real and it is different from me. Then in the state of knowledge, I understood, no, the world is Brahman alone, I am also Brahman alone. But still, body was there, was seeing the world. Now in this step of Videha Mukti, what happens? There is no body, there is no world, therefore Brahman alone is. Difference. Right? So, pot which created a seeming difference between pot space and total space. On knowledge, you understood that the pot space is total space, but still the pot was there. Now when the pot breaks, there is no confusion, absolutely. There is no concept of pot space now. Space alone is. Even that seeming difference is not there. And therefore, you see the words used by Shankaracharya, sphutam bhavati. Gate nashte yatha vyoma, vyomaiva bhavati sphutam. Clearly, it becomes. Clearly means what? Now even seeming distinction is not there. Swayam Brahmavid Brahmaeva bhavati. Brahmavid, knower of Brahman himself, Swayam Brahmaeva bhavati, becomes Brahman alone. Why? There is no upadhi now. Upadhi is also gone. How this Brahmavid becomes Brahman? Next verse gives 3 examples. 567. Kshiram kshire yatha kshiptam.
Kshiram kshire yatha kshiptam.
Tailam taile jalam jale.
Tailam taile jalam jale.
Samyuktamekatam yati.
Samyuktamekatam yati.
Tathatmanyatmavin munihi.
Tadhatmanyatmavin munihi.
Kshiram kshire yatha kshiptam. Tailam taile jalam jale. Sanyuktamekatam yati. Tathatmanyatmavin munihi. Yatha, just as, kshiram, kshire kshiptam. The milk is poured into milk. Kshira means milk. Kshiram, milk. Kshire, in the milk. Kshiptam, poured. Tailam, taile kshiptam. Oil is poured into oil. Jalam jale. Water is poured into water. What happens? Sanyuktam, being united, ekatam yati. They become one. They attain oneness. Isn't it? Milk you are pouring into milk. Both are milk. So you can't even say there are two milks. There is only one milk. Tatha, in the same way, Atmani, Atmavit Munihi, Atmanam Kshiptam. Atmavit Munihi, the Atmavit, knower of the self, Munihi, that reflective Jnani, Atmani, in the self, pours the self. Means what? Becomes one with the self. There is no distinction now. Kshiram kshire kshiptam, tailam taile kshiptam, jalam jale kshiptam. In the same way, atmanam atmani kshiptam. You can't even say kshiptam, etc. That's why Shankaracharya has not used anything. Physical things like milk, water, oil, etc. can be poured. How the self will be poured into self, you explain. What is the container for the self? There is no such concept. So that's why kshiptam, etc. he is not using. He just says tatha atmani atmavit. The knower of the self becomes one in the self. Okay, sanyuktam, being united, ekatam yati, becomes one. Becomes one. Right? Now, such a person, now what all things have happened? That Jnani who had realized the self earlier, now on the fall of the upadhis has totally become one with Brahman. Such a Jnani will never take a birth again. Next verse, 568. Evam videha kaivalyam sanmatratvam akhanditam brahma bhavam prapadyaishaha yatirnavartate punaha. Evam videha kaivalyam sanmatratvam akhanditam brahma bhavam prapadyaishaha yatirnavartate punaha. Evam, in this way, prapadya, that is the apurna kriya. See, videha kaivalyam sanmatratvam akhanditam brahma bhavam prapadya. Prapadya, having attained what? Brahma bhava. Brahmanhood, state of Brahman. What kind of state of Brahman? Videha kaivalyam. Liberation at the destruction of body. Kaivalyam also means oneness. That oneness itself is liberation. No? So, videha kaivalyam brahma bhavam prapadya. Having attained that state of Brahman, which is videha kaivalyam, oneness without any embodiment. How is it? Sanmatratvam. It is being existence alone. There is no even seeming difference now. Akhanditam, unbroken. Having attained this state of Brahman at the fall of the upadhis, eshaha yatihi, this jnani, na avartate punaha, does not come back again. Punaha, again. Avartate means coming back. Na avartate. Does not come back again. Does not take new birth. No more births. Sometimes videha mukti also is understood as destruction of the future body. Videha means there is no future deha. That is true also here. When the old deha is gone, new deha is not taken. For us, videha mukti is not there. Ignorant people, why? One deha is here. When one deha will go, another deha will come. There is no question of no deha. That is not possible. And if the gross deha is not there, subtle deha is already there, subtle body is there. But for the jnani, what has happened? When this body falls, because he has already realized, he becomes one with Brahman and therefore no more births. does not come back again. Isn't that what we wanted? That is what we wanted. That is why we did all these things, and that we will gain on this Jivan Mukti or Videha Mukti. Why do you say that there is no rebirth? Because for Brahman there is no rebirth. And Brahma Jnani is Brahman. Therefore there is no rebirth. Next verse says this and concludes this topic. 569. Sadatmaikatva Vijnana Dagdha Vidyadi Varshmanaha Amushya Brahma Bhutatvat Brahmanah Kuta Udbhavah Sadatmaikatva Vijnana Dagdha Vidyadi Varshmanaha Amushya Brahma Bhutatvat Brahmanah Kuta Udbhavah. Brahma Bhutatvat, because of being Brahman, Amushya, for him, Sada Atma Ekatva Vijnana Dagdha Avidyadi Varshmanaha. This is the adjective for Amushya. Varshmanaha, whose body, Varshma means body, Avidyadi, starting from ignorance, etc., means the causal body, the subtle body, and the gross body, whose bodies Dagdha have been burnt, Sadatmaikatva Vijnana, because of the knowledge of oneness of the self, of existence of the self, or ever understanding the oneness of the self, whose bodies starting from ignorance have been burnt. For such a person, Brahma Bhutatva, because of he being Brahman, Brahmanah Kuta Udbhavah. Where is the birth for Brahman? Now this person has become Brahman. How can he be reborn? Earlier he had not become Brahman. He was considering himself to be Jiva, and therefore he was born again and again. But now what has happened to him? Sada Atma Ekatva Vijnana, because of the knowledge of the oneness of the existence of the self, Dagdha Avidyadi Varshmanaha, whose bodies starting from ignorance etc. have been burnt. For such a person who has no upadhis, who has no ignorance, who has no subtle body, who has no gross body, such a person, Brahma Bhutatva, he is Brahman. And therefore, being Brahman, he is not born again. Why? Brahmana Udbhavaha Kutaha. Where is the birth for Brahman? Therefore, Brahma Jnani, being Brahman, has no more births. That's why it is total liberation, final liberation. See, Jivan Mukta also has no more births. Jivan Mukta also has no more birth. But Jivan Mukta, for that birth, it is still continuing, no? No future births, correct? But it appears as though the Jivan Mukta is still alive. So that birth is going on. Now when the body falls, there is no more birth. That is the point. Now at such state, now we are talking about both legs completely in Paramarthika Satta. There is not even half a leg in Vyavaharika Satta now. Why? There is no upadhis, there is no world, there is nothing. From such standpoint, let me tell you something. What now Shankaracharya takes up the final, Vada theory in Vedanta. The final theory in Vedanta is what? See, we earlier also we have discussed, there are so many theories in Vedanta, Pratibhimbavada, Avachedavada, etc. The theory of reflection, the theory of conditioning, correct? How that Brahman has become Jiva. To explain this, we say it is like the sun getting reflected in different waters. One sun, many reflections. The reflection is as pure and as stable according to the water. One theory. Another theory we have explained is avachedavada. It is like space getting conditioned by different things. Pot space, room space, needle space, etc. Okay? In all these explanations, we have given a theory which says that yes, there is apparently there is a fall. There is an apparent fall that Brahman has become Jiva. So to say it has become Jiva, and therefore such a Jiva should become sadhaka, should want to liberate oneself, should understand one's true nature and become free from this samsara. For such Jiva who considers oneself to be bound, bandha, is said that you should have moksha. Get rid of samsara. Right now you are under the veiling of Maya. Remove this veiling of Maya. All these different theories have been explained. Now comes the final theory of Vedanta, which says there is no Maya, there is no bandha, there is no moksha. Brahman has never become Jiva. So you don't even have to get liberated. Why they didn't tell in the beginning? Because you were not ready for it. Now that you have understood all these things, you must understand that all these concepts, such as Maya, such as bandha, moksha, samsara, Jiva, all these concepts are only on Vyavaharika level. On the Paramarthika level, they do not exist. Starting from 570 up to 575, next 6 verses, he takes up this topic, that these concepts are not relevant now. A person has become jnani, upadhis are also gone. The seeming difference is also ended. As Brahman alone has remained now, there is no relevance of such concepts. Let us see. Few verses we will see now, few we will see in the next session. 570. Maya kluptau bandha mokshau nastasvatmani vastutah yatha rajjau nishkriyayam sarpa bhasa vinirgamau. Maya kluptau bandha mokshau nastasvatmani vastutah yatha rajjau nishkriyayam sarpa bhasa vinirgamau. Maya kluptau bandha mokshau. These two concepts of bondage and liberation, bandha and moksha, are Maya kluptau, are created by Maya. Created by Maya. So, avidya Maya is bandhakaraka, vidya Maya is mokshakaraka. Earlier also we have seen this. Avidya Maya is what? The two aspects of Maya which are avarana and vikshepa aspect. Vidya Maya is the third aspect of Maya, which is Viveka Shakti, which frees you from the bondage created by Avidya Maya. So Avidya Maya puts you in bondage, Vidya Maya liberates you, but both bandha and moksha, both bondage and liberation, are creations of Maya. Swatmani vastutah nastaha. Staha is dual. Asti staha santi. Bandha mokshau, bondage and liberation, nastaha, are not there. Swatmani, in the self, vastutah, by nature. Both these things are created, conjured up by Maya. They are not there in the self. Means what? On the Paramarthika level, there is no concept of bandha, no concept of moksha. Yatha, just as Rajjau nishkriyayam, Rajjau, in the rope, nishkriyayam, which undergoes no modification, Sarpa abhasa vinirgamau. Sarpa is snake. Abhasa means appearance. Vinirgama means disappearance. In the rope which undergoes no modification, the appearance of the snake and disappearance of the snake, both are not there. For the rope, there is no snake. For an ignorant person, there was snake, now the snake has vanished. But for the rope, there is no snake. In the same way, Maya, Avidya Maya created the concept called Bandha. So Maya, another Maya, Vidya Maya created another concept called Moksha. They both fought with each other. Then this Avidya Maya was destroyed by Vidya Maya. But then what happened? Everything is just in Maya. It's not true. In the self, there is no concept of Bandha, no concept of Moksha. So you can't even say self is liberated. Why? Because self was never bound. You can't say Jiva is liberated. Why? Because Jiva is not there. You can't say Brahman is liberated. Why? Brahman was never bound. So you see, all words fail. Why? Because the entire thing is conjured up by Maya only. Bandha also, Moksha also. If you think you are bound, you need to get liberated. If you think, if you understand, if you realize that you are the self who was never bound, then no liberation is needed. Remember the story of camel? We have seen earlier that camel, imaginary rope was tied to his and then made to, you see, imaginary bondage. Imaginary, but because bondage was imagined, liberation also has to be imagined. If you have acted as though you are tying the camel, you also have to act that you are untying the camel. But actually speaking, you can't say camel is liberated. Why? Because camel was never bound. In the same way, the self was never bound, is not bound, and therefore self doesn't need liberation. Jiva also does not need liberation because Jiva is not there. To understand that bondage is not there, you have to get liberated. To understand that there is no bondage and liberation, you have to get liberated from the imaginary bondage. If the bondage is imaginary, liberation is also imaginary. Okay, further explains one more verse. Let us see verse number 571. Avrite sadasattvabhyam vaktavye bandha mokshane navritir brahmanah kachit anya bhavadanavrtam yadyastadvaitaha nisyat dvaitam no sahate shrutihi avrite sadasattvabhyam vaktavye bandha mokshane navritir brahmanah kachit anya bhavadanavrtam yadyastyadvaitaha nisyad dvaitam no sahate shrutihi. Sat asatvabhyam avritehe bandha mokshane vaktavye. What is that? Sat asatvabhyam avritehe. Avritehe, of the veiling. Avriti means veiling. Avarana. Of the veiling, sat asatvabhyam, the presence and absence of veiling. With respect to the presence and absence of veiling, bandha mokshane vaktavye, again dual. Bandha mokshanam, bandha mokshane. Bandha and moksha, vaktavye, are to be spoken of. only with respect to the presence and absence of veiling, bondage and liberation is to be spoken of. Means what? When the veiling is present, it is bondage. When the veiling is absent, it is no bondage, it is liberation. But Brahmanaha avritihi na. But Brahman is never veiled. There is no veiling for Brahman. Kachit, even a wee bit. Anya abhavat anavritam. Why? Because anavritam, it is ever unveiled. Brahman is ever unveiled. Why? Anya abhavat. Because there is nothing other than Brahman. See, for Brahman to be veiled, there should be something other than Brahman which will veil Brahman. For Brahman, there is nothing other than Brahman. You may say Maya has veiled Brahman, but there is no Maya for Brahman. Anya abhavat, because there is nothing other than Brahman, Brahman is never veiled, it is ever unveiled. And therefore, there is no presence of veiling, there is no absence of veiling, there is no concept of veiling. Then how can you explain concepts like bandha, moksha, bondage, liberation, etc. for Brahman? They are not there. Yadi asti. If there is veiling for Brahman, advaita hani syat. Then there will be destruction of non-duality. Then you can't say Brahman is non-dual. If you say Brahman is veiled, then there has to be something other than Brahman which is veiling the Brahman, which means Brahman is not non-dual. Advaita hani syat. So what? So Veji, there will be hani of Advaita. Dvaitam no sahate shrutihi. But Shruti, scripture doesn't tolerate Dvaita. Duality is not tolerated, not allowed in Shruti. And therefore, since Shruti says very clearly there is non-duality, which proves that Brahman alone is, and therefore there is nothing other than Brahman which can veil Brahman, which means that Brahman is never veiled and it is ever unveiled, which means that there is no concept of bondage which is called veiling on Brahman, and liberation, unveiling of Brahman. Such concepts are not there. To explain this, there is one more example. Let us see, it is in flow. Let us complete it. Earlier also we have seen this example, 572. Bandham cha moksham cha mrishaiva moodhaah.
Bandhascha mokshascha mrishaiva moodhaah.
Buddher gunam vastu nikalpayanti. Drugavritim megha kritam yatharavau. Yato dvaya sangachide tadaksharam. Bandham cha moksham cha mrishaiva moodhaah. Buddher gunam vastu nikalpayanti. Drugavritim megha kritam yatharavau. Yato dvaya sangachide tadaksharam. In some pathas it is bandhascha mokshascha. Both are okay. I will explain how. Bandha, bondage. Moksha, liberation. Mrishaeva. Both are unreal, both are false. Moodhaha, fools. Buddhehe gunam, qualities of the intellect. Vastuni kalpayanti, imagine on the self. Even bondage and liberation are qualities of the mind and intellect. Who is bound? Mind is bound. Who is liberated? Mind is liberated. These qualities of the mind and intellect, mudha, fools, imagine, superimpose on the self, vastuni, on the reality. So, if you say bandhascha mokshascha, then it will be two sentences. First sentence will be bandhacha mokshacha mrishaeva, full stop. Bondage and liberation are indeed false. Moodhaha, fools, buddhehe gunam, qualities of the intellect, vastuni kalpayanti, superimpose on the self. If you say bandham cha moksham cha, mrisha eva, buddhehe gunam, then it will become adjective for buddhehe gunam. Bandham moksham buddhehe gunam. Dvitiya ekvachan. Why? Because then moodhaha, pratama bahuvachan is the subject. Fools, fools superimpose qualities of the mind such as bondage and ignorance which are false on the reality. Like that sentence will be. Both are okay. Both mean the same. What is the meaning? Both bondage and liberation are not real. They are concepts, and therefore concepts belong to mind and intellect. Therefore they are qualities, properties of mind and intellect. Wrongly we superimpose them on the self. Example, yatha ravau, just as ravau, on the sun or in the sun, megha kritam, created by clouds, druk avritim, veiling of the vision. Druk means vision, avriti means veiling. Megha kritam drugavritim. See, clouds, what do? We may say that they veil the sun, but actually what do? They veil our vision of the sun. Correct? That's why he says here, megha kritam drugavritim. What is that? Veiling on the eye created by the cloud in the sun. Means what? The clouds, so to say, veil our vision of the sun. Right? Sun actually is never veiled by clouds. See, this example we have seen so many times before. In Atma Bodha also we have seen. So, again what happens? The veiling which is happening on the eye, my vision is veiled. I superimpose it on the sun and I say the sun is veiled. The sun is not veiled. My vision is veiled. My vision is covered. Sun is not covered by clouds. So clouds are covering my vision. I superimpose this veiling of my vision on the sun and I say the sun is veiled. Sun is never veiled. In the same way, the self is never bound. Etat aksharam, this imperishable reality, advaya is non-dual, asanga, unattached, chit, consciousness alone. That self is never bound, is never veiled. And therefore, there is no need to liberate it. Because it is never bound. So from Paramarthika level, there is no bondage, there is no liberation. This is the point. Okay? See see, towards the end of the text also, but Shankaracharya, how meticulously is presenting the thought. First he said that bandha and moksha are concepts which are there according to the veiling and unveiling. The presence of the veiling, bondage. Absence of the veiling, liberation. Both these concepts, Maya Klupto, are created by Maya. Why? Because Brahman is never veiled. It is ever unveiled. Why? Because there is nothing other than Brahman which can veil Brahman. If you say the Brahman is veiled, then you will have to posit something other than Brahman. Then Brahman will not remain non-dual. If Brahman is not non-dual, Shruti will not accept it. Shruti clearly says Brahman is non-dual, which means it can never be veiled, which means there is nothing other than Brahman. If it is never veiled, then what unveiling are we talking about? So veiling is unreal, imaginary. So is unveiling. Okay? The imaginary rope which is tied around the camel. So you have to untie also imaginary. The tying and untying, both are imaginary. There is no there is no bandha, there is no moksha. Okay. Some more verses are there explaining the same point, and with that, the dialogue between the Guru and Shishya is concluded, and Shankaracharya as the author in the last verse concludes the entire text also. Next session will be the last session to see the verses. Okay. Then we will have one summary session and one question answer session. Okay. But the text will get over in the next session. All right. Chalo. There is no bandha, there is no moksha from the paramarthika level. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.